The story of Ben Hall is well known, and along with Ned Kelly, he would be the most recognised bushranger in Australia. We're not going to go into the life and times of Ben, rather look at some of the unusual facts, myths and legends after he was buried. More on the history of Ben is at the Forbes Historical Museum, and it's well worth a visit. Ben was shot and killed on Friday, May the 5th, 1865, and his body carried into Forbes draped over a horse. He was buried in the Forbes Cemetery the following Sunday, May the 7th. Newspapers of the day gave a full description of the burial.
The funeral, Western Examiner, May 1865. The funeral procession started for the cemetery at 4 o'clock and consisted of the hearse driven by undertaker Mr. Toller. The hearse was ornamented with black plumes in profusion and drawn by black horses. Immediately following were Ben Hall's brother William Hall and his wife, 2 or 3 carriages and 40 to 50 persons on foot. At the cemetery, about 100 persons had collected. The coffin was taken from the hearse and placed over the grave. A bottle of holy water was then sprinkled over it by Mr. Toller, and the burial service of the Roman Catholic Church was read by Mr. James K. Montgomery. The coffin was then lowered. Among the spectators were between 40 and 50 females, young and old.
For many years, Ben's grave lay in a remote corner of the Forbes Cemetery, slowly deteriorating. Even the rough wooden cross with Ben's name on it had gone. Finally, in 1923, 2 retired shearers, Jim and Ted Plunkett, decided to do something about it.
For years, Ben Hall's grave at Forbes has been left to rot. The fence around it has been left for decay. The weather has swept thin the rude wooden slab with the name cut into it. But now, quietly and mysteriously, in silent pride, a marble headstone has been set up in place of the worn wood.
They had just replaced the headstone on their parents' grave, and they had it refurbished with Ben's name upon it. Here's the story as told by the local press.
Forbes Advocate, 1923. The majority of Forbes people are unaware that the grave of Ben Hall has been embellished with a new marble headstone. E.J. and J. Plunkett had the stone removed from the grave of their parents when the new memorial stone was erected by them to their parents. Mr. C.J. Shakespeare, a sculptor of Wellington, removed the old inscription and replaced it with, "In memory of Ben Hall."
There was even a poem written about it.
Forbes Advocate, 1923. To champion shearers of their time, the Plunketts, Jim and Ted, the odds were mostly 10 to 1 that Plunkett rung the shed. Ted's nigh on 80 years of age, a tough old fellow still, and Jim and he have lived for years, quite close to Raymond's mill. They thought they'd like another round before the final call and discussed the matter with a friend. The topic was Ben Hall, and straight away to the cemetery, his resting place to pave, and now the wide lamented has a tombstone on his grave. And it may be wrong, as many say, of such to make a fuss, but sympathy's a lovely thing, and so say all of us. The wild old days are dead and gone. They'll say I've got some gall. But here's a toast that men will drink to the memory of Ben Hall.
Even in death, Ben caused controversy about the glorification of his name.
Forbes Advocate, 1916. Ye gods, what next? A monument to a bushranger? Surely there is someone in the Forbes Cemetery lying beneath the sod, unwept, unhonoured and unsung, whose memory is more worthy of being perpetuated than that of Ben Hall.
And then there was the time gold was discovered on his grave.
A nugget was picked off the alluvial mound of bushranger Ben Hall's grave at Forbes the other day. Several irreverent spectators are anxious to prospect among the bones of the much-shot outlaw.
Over time there have been many stories about the fact that Ben was not even buried on this spot, and the reasons are many and varied. Just ask them at the local museum and they'll tell you. One of the Hall descendants even wanted to exhume the grave. However, after ground-penetrating radar was utilised, it was found that there is a body in the grave. Other myths abound, particularly that of a woman dressed in black who placed flowers on Ben's grave over many years. And of course we have lots of ghost stories. There's even a song that was recorded by both Smokey Dawson and Slim Dusty. It's a little known fact that the ashes of Ben Hall's great-grandson, also Ben, were scattered on the grave in 2012. Ben Jr. was reputed to have a striking resemblance to his great-grandfather and indeed also had a love for horses and owned a Cobb & Co coach. Our cemetery is a treasure trove of history and folklore. It's well signposted and there are many other sites to visit apart from Ben. Just ask our Forbes Visitors Information Centre. Take a moment to reflect on Ben's life, story and death. Was he a villain or a good man driven to crime by circumstance? We'll leave it up to you to decide.